everybody. We are live at WSM tonight, and I got my good friend Caleb here and a few others. Johnny and Noah. Noah's in the back. He's going to be running a lot of the computers tonight. But Johnny and Caleb are going to play a little game with us tonight. So we're going to give a little shout out to everybody who's logged on and online. So if you're online, go ahead and let us know that you're there in the comments, and we'll be giving you a little shout out here in just a little bit. But tonight we're going to play a little game called 7 in 11. And here's how the game works. You guys can play online as well. So what I encourage you to do is you will want to try to type in the comments exactly what you see, the 7 items. And so here's how this game works. Caleb, I'm going to give you a category, and you will have 11 seconds to name 7 items that fall into that category. So that's what you're going to want to do online, is you're going to want to try and type on either in the comment section or just play with your family if you're watching with your family or siblings. Try to yell out, come up with 7 of these items in 11 seconds. So we're going to show, as soon as I show you the category, that's when you're going to start going, because I think the timer is going to start as soon as that category goes, okay? Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. I hope you guys online are ready, because we're going to go ahead and get started. So here we go. Your first one. Watch the screen. It's coming up. Zoo animals. Go.
Giraffe, zebra, elephant, hippo.
Oh, time. Oh, man. When you're on the pressure, it's hard to come up with them, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you see that timer go, it's like all of a sudden, boom. So you could have said a couple of other things. What were some other things you could have said?
Well, I could have said. I tried the gorilla and lion.
Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. That would have gotten you there.
Maybe
yeah.
not bears, but.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Does Topeka Zoo has bears?
Oh,
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, good job. Thank you, Caleb. Let's do one more round with Caleb real quick here. All right. You ready? You want to do another one?
Oh, sure.
Yes, you do. Of course you do. All right, let's clear this one, and then we'll come up with another one. Hopefully you guys had a good chance online to come up with a few items. I can't see the comments from this far away. Caleb, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, here's our next category. On your marks, get set, go. Sodas, different types of sodas, go.
Okay. Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper.
Come on.
I'm trying to think of that orange soda.
Orange.
Yes.
We'll just call it orange.
Yeah.
Ah! Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, and orange. That's what I heard.
What the orange soda was. But
Yeah, you could have said Pepsi,
yeah.
Coca-Cola, root beer, all sorts of different things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mellow Yellow. I don't know.
Mellow. I did not
drink
know
Mellow Yellow?
that one.
Yeah. No. Diet Pepsi. There's a whole nother slew of things there. Yeah.
I could have said diet.
Yeah, all the
Mountain
diets.
Dew.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Caleb. Thanks so much for playing. I'm gonna have Johnny come on over. Hopefully, you guys. I don't know if you guys are hearing Johnny and Caleb here. If their mics are working, we'll find out. All right. Are you, Johnny? Do you think you can complete the 7 and 11 challenge?
No.
No. Okay. Well, Caleb did
More than 3.
outstanding.
More than 3.
Wasn't quite there, but he'll get it. Hopefully, you guys online are getting some of these items, right? I see the comment section going crazy up on the table there. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. We're going to try another category real quick.
What?
On your marks, get set, go. NFL teams, go.
Bengals, Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Baltimore, Colts, Titans, Texans.
Okay, you did it. Good job. You barely made
That's
it,
cheating.
I think. I don't know if you repeated yourself on any of those. I wasn't paying attention enough, but way to go. Good job. Look, it's just now showing up. There's about a 15 to 20 second delay between what's actually happening live and what's actually taking place, what you guys are seeing online. So, you ready to do another one? That was awesome. You did a great job. Hopefully our online group did that as well. We'll find out. You ready to do another one?
Yes.
All right, here we go. This one you're not going to get, I'm
No.
pretty sure. Things in a garage, go.
Tools, fridge, cars.
You got 3. Good job. Cars. Yeah, I like that. That was good. That was really good.
That's all I got.
A fridge? Fridge in the garage. All right, good.
Freezer, something
Yeah,
like that,
fridge,
yeah.
freezer. And tools. You said tools. Yeah. Let's see. What are some other things that you find in a garage?
A door.
A door. A garage door. I guess you could say that. Yeah. How about like sports equipment?
Yes.
You know, like
Or
basketball.
shelves.
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 Some storage stuff, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's see. That's pretty close to 7.
Yeah, that's close enough.
All right, give it up for Johnny tonight. Good job. And Caleb. Way to go, guys. And Noah in the background. Hey, we're finishing up our series tonight called What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. And so we're going to go ahead and roll our bumper video and get started in just a little bit. We'll see you in a bit.
So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
That's awesome. We're live? Oh, cool. I'm just reading through these comments and noticed that Johnny got called out on the NFL teams. Ravens are the same as Baltimore. So, nice try. Well, anyway, hey, we're glad that you're here tonight. I'm going to share a little story to get started off. When I was in high school, my friends and I would like to go to Taco Bell quite a bit. And I don't know where you stand with Taco Bell. Some of you can't stand with Taco Bell. You've got to sit, you know what I mean? But we loved it because it was one of those only fast food restaurants in town that you really, you really didn't have to be picky about what you ate. I mean, you could go there and order a couple of tacos for just around $1. And so it became the perfect place for those of us who were short on cash all the time, right? The only problem was $1 for me was still way too much money. And so there were some days when I would show up at Taco Bell and I didn't have enough money to order anything. And so on those days, I just kind of played it off, I wasn't hungry. But I had a friend, his name was Steve, and he noticed when I said I wasn't hungry and knew that it was more of a money issue than an actual hunger issue. So he would tell me go ahead and order what you want. I got you. And so every time Steve would cover me, I'd say, man, thanks so much, Steve. I'll pay you back. And he would say, no need to worry about it. You're good, right? Now, to this day, I still remember that I was this poor, sophomore who couldn't afford to buy really cheap tacos. And Steve picked up my tab without asking for payback. In fact, Steve did that a lot of times. He would pick up my tab without ever expecting anything in return. And so not asking to be paid back is kind of that heartwarming when it comes to borrowing money for tacos. But here's the thing. Other times, payback is complicated, right? I mean, outside of paying money back to someone you owe, the idea of paying back also comes up when someone hurts us. For example, when someone talks about us behind our back, we want payback. Or when someone flirts with our girlfriend or boyfriend, we want payback. Or when someone fails to text us back and invite us to this group outing, we kind of want payback. And it's in those moments when we've been hurt, those are when we want payback. Now, you might not go like all scary movie and get like terrifying revenge. You might not even, write a song about them like literally every pop star seems to have ever done. But we do try to get payback in one way or another. I mean, we want them to feel the pain and the hurt that we felt. We want them to be embarrassed in the same way that we were embarrassed. And so our first reaction is almost always to want to get even, or at least to get something in return, even if it's just knowing like a shady Snapchat comment was actually about them, right? And so isn't that true that the closer we are, isn't it true that the closer we are to the person, the more we want payback, right? The more that we want it is kind of closely related to how close we are to them in relationship. So most of you aren't trying to pay back someone else's brother or sister. You don't have feelings, your feelings aren't hurt because of someone else's best friend and what they did to them. Or you probably aren't angry because of someone else's ex and what they did. You see, it's usually the people who are closest to you and the people who know you best, they have the most potential to hurt you. And so they're most likely to be on your list of people who owe you some sort of payback. And so for most of us, payback comes in one of three ways. There's the first one, public payback. I mean, this is when we do to them kind of exactly what they did to us in a very obvious way. Like they talked about us, so we talk about them behind their back. Or we do something on Snapchat and we make a very bold statement about them. Or we kind of snap back at them really loudly, or we roast them publicly and just say, just kidding. So there's public payback. There's also passive payback. This is way more subtle. It's when we make comments that aren't obvious, they're hurtful, and they can be interpreted that way, but they're kind of, vague. We put the subtle post on social media. We roll our eyes when that one person starts to talk, or we ignore someone's texts, right? So there's public, there's private, and then there's imaginary payback. And this is one that I'm an expert at, right? Like I know exactly how to do this. And this is when imaginary is when we have this argument in our mind and we literally destroy them. Like we dominate the conversation. We have a way better argument, a better comeback, and we just annihilate them, right? We have the final word all in our minds, and it takes over our thoughts, but we never actually do anything. And what's amazing about all of this payback is that sometimes we do have the opportunity for payback, but if not payback, then at least the chance to celebrate when things fall apart for the person who hurts us. Like if we can't pay them back, then we at least enjoy watching them fail. Like when someone who hurt us messes up and then we're loaded with the ammunition to hurt them when they are down. Like when our ex broke up with us for someone else and then he or she got dumped later. Or when our mom snapped at us and kind of hurt our feelings and now she's crying and apologizing. I mean, it's kind of like the perfect setup to put that exclamation mark on her regret. Or the guy who made fun of us way back in 3rd grade and we are for real still angry with them. When they face plant, we kind of laugh a little bit, right? You see, it's in those moments that it feels like justice is served, doesn't it? Like it feels good to see someone get what's coming to them, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And that's exactly the sort of thing that Joseph found himself in as we wrap up his story tonight. See, in this series, we've been kind of journeying through the life of Joseph, whose story is found in the book of Genesis, and I invite you to go check it out. If you haven't, we've been kind of just touching bits and pieces of it. You really need to go back and read all of Joseph's story in the book of Genesis. It's a wild story, one where oftentimes he had no idea what to do next. And if you remember way back when we started this series, we talked about how Joseph knew he was his dad's favorite, and he kind of rubbed it in just a little bit to his brothers' faces, right? If you remember that, he had these dreams where he would, the sun, the moon, and the stars and the sheaths of grain would bow down to him. And so he kind of rubbed that into his brother's face just a little bit. And since Joseph was kind of super annoying to his brothers, they plotted to kill him, which I know seems like a slight overreaction, but hey, I wasn't there. So instead of killing him, they saw this group of folks traveling through town, and they decided to make a little money just by selling him as a slave. And so the rest of the series, we covered things like Joseph as a slave in Egypt, Joseph as a slave in prison in Egypt, Joseph as the man who could interpret the dreams of Pharaoh, who was the ruler of Egypt. So Joseph was eventually placed in charge of all of Egypt. I mean, he was second in command to Pharaoh. Not a bad outcome for a kid who was sold into slavery by his brothers. But then there's a plot twist, right? Joseph was second in command, and there was this big famine and a food shortage where his family lived. And so Joseph's dad, Jacob, sends Joseph's brothers to Egypt to ask for food because they were beginning to starve. And so at this point in the story, Joseph's family was probably thinking they'll never see Joseph again. He's probably dead. We don't have a clue what happened to him. So of course they weren't thinking about the possibility of seeing Joseph when they get to Egypt to ask for food. And so when they arrived in Egypt and saw Joseph, they didn't know who he was. They didn't know it was Joseph. All of a sudden, a huge drama unfolds. And you can read about that in Genesis 42 through 50. You don't want to miss it. So tonight what we're going to do is we're just going to pick up a little bit of the story. We're going to look in Genesis chapter 45. So this is what it says. It says, then Joseph could no longer control himself. Remember his brothers, he's seen his brothers, they saw him, and it's had this little interaction with them. He could no longer control himself before all of his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified of his presence. So just imagine the tension and the emotion of that moment. Joseph was face to face with the people who tried to kill him, his own brothers who sold him into slavery, and now these same brothers are ironically asking him for help. I mean, this was a get what's coming to you moment at its finest. Like everything has been set up for this moment perfectly, for Joseph to finally get back. Payback was dropped in Joseph's lap. I mean, Joseph, he could have refused them food. He could have had them thrown into prison, maybe even given them a little taste of their own medicine. He could have had them killed right then and there. I mean, they were certainly willing to do that to him. So let's pause for a moment. What would you do? I mean, you don't have to say it out loud. You don't have to post in the comments because maybe, you're in an argument with your brothers or something like that. I mean, what would you have done, though? In your own mind, in your head, be honest with yourself. What would you have done with all that power to be able to hurt the person or the people who've hurt you the most? Honestly, for me, I don't know what I would do. I've not been in Joseph's shoes. I've not been at a place where someone has hurt me that badly. But I know what Joseph does is something that teaches you and me something incredible. So the story continues. Joseph asks his brothers to walk over and stand close to him. And you can imagine the terror on his brothers as they were in that moment. But Joseph begs them to come close to him. And this is what happens. It says this. He kisses his brothers and wept over them. And afterwards, his brothers finally talked with him. Now, there's only one reason I think Joseph could have responded this way. There's only one reason Joseph could have responded the way that he did. He didn't try to get payback because he had already let go of the idea of revenge. He'd already done the hard work of forgiveness. How do you know all of this? I think that the reason is because Joseph could look in the eyes of the one who had caused him the most grief, the most pain, the most hurt, and he starts to care about how they were feeling in that moment. Like when he says, don't be distressed, don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here. In fact, there's a passage that I wasn't able to show on the screen, but he even goes on to say, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. And he goes on, he says, don't be distressed about and angry with yourselves for selling me here. I mean, he was acknowledging in that moment their wrong and their hurt without creating more hurt. And here's the thing, only someone who's been healed could do that. In other words, only someone who had forgiven can do that. See, Joseph chose forgiveness over payback, and we see that in the moment when he had the greatest opportunity for revenge. I mean, somewhere between being sold into slavery and being reunited with his brothers, Joseph did that hard work of giving his hurt over to God and allowing God to be central in his healing. And I think that's why Joseph was quick to acknowledge God in that area where his brothers had caused him the most pain. Remember, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. I mean, it didn't make what his brothers did okay. Please hear me there. It didn't make Joseph's pain any less. It just took that real pain and that real hurt, and it no longer put them on center stage. Instead, it put God there. And I think that's what made forgiveness possible. Taking the hurt and the pain off center stage and putting God there instead. See, forgiveness was not only possible for his brothers, it became for Joseph the freedom from his own pain too. See, Joseph goes on and tells his brothers to go get their father and move the entire family to Egypt because the famine was going to continue for several more years. And without making that move, the family would suffer. And so that's when this moment of the kiss and the reunification with his brothers, and they start to talk with him, takes place. You know, the only thing that may be better than payback is this one word. It's a big word. It's a Bible word. It's this idea of reconciliation. This is where we see God do the impossible in relationships. He brings peace when there has only been hurt before. And it's all because of forgiveness. Reconciliation. It's a beautiful word. You see, when it comes to other people hurting us, we too have the opportunity to choose reconciliation over payback. In fact, here's a simple way to just remember it. When you don't know what to do, pursue peace instead of payback. When you don't know what to do, pursue peace instead of payback. When you pursue peace, you build a bridge. Payback burns bridges. In other words, you can fight to win, you can fight to be right, you can try your best to make your point, or you can fight the urge for payback and pursue peace, but you cannot do both. When you pursue peace, you fight for the relationship. And I think that's what Joseph does, is he preserved his relationship with all of his brothers and his father because he chose peace instead. He was only able to do that because he had fought through forgiveness. And that was only possible. Forgiveness was only possible with the help of God. And so Joseph didn't have the superpower that allowed him to do all of this. Instead, he just had God. He had the determination to do the work of peace, do the work of God, and begin to start this process of reconciliation, understanding that God was at work in his situation. And I think that you and I can do that very thing too. You see, when we pursue peace, you lay down your right to get even. You lay down your right to get the payback that you deserve. You let go of revenge. You say goodbye to your desire to get even. Instead, you choose a path of forgiveness. And what you do in that moment is you choose God's message, God's story of reconciliation instead of your own story of payback and revenge. Now, I know it's easier said than done. It's easy for me to say, go ahead and forgive them. And something you may have, it may be something that you have to work on every single day, but the ultimate benefit is for you. You not only have peace with them, but you also have peace with yourself in those moments. So, I want you to remember this. When Joseph found himself in situations where he didn't know what to do, do I get payback or do I pursue peace? Here's what he did. He trusted that God had a much bigger story in mind. And I believe that Joseph knew that peace was a much better way forward than payback. You see, Joseph had no clue whether or not he would ever get to see his family again. But when he did, he was ready because he had done the work of forgiveness in his own heart first. So he had given his hurt over to God. And so here's why this gets complicated. Just a little bit, right? You and I haven't had something happen to us like Joseph. Like, in fact, I could tell you dozens of stories, and none of them would be exactly like yours, and none of them would be like Joseph's. Maybe you've spent the whole time wondering, do you always have to reconcile? Or what about when it's a toxic relationship? Or what if you're the one who did the hurting? See, each of us have unique and complicated situations, and figuring out what it looks like to pursue peace, let's be honest, it's not easy. But that's why I think we do these things like small groups. That's why I think they're so important. Because we want you to be able to talk about what this looks like for you in your life, with your friends and your family. But I do know this. One thing that Jesus taught several years after Joseph was this: blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called the children of God. And so as we close tonight, I want you to think about what you have the power to do when it comes to pursuing peace. So in other words, what do you need to decide? Who do you need to forgive? Or what offense do you need to bring to God? Because I believe he could do some incredible things in your story that you may not be able to imagine just yet. And so when you don't know what to do, I encourage you to pursue peace instead of hate. Let me pray for us. God, thank you so much for this night. Thank you for our time to gather together, to kind of goof off and to celebrate, but also to be reminded of something incredibly powerful. That there are moments in our lives when we don't know what to do. Do we get even? Do we not? Do we just forget and try to move on, or do we try to get even? God, sometimes in those moments, it's difficult for us to pursue peace. But tonight, I want tonight to be a moment when we can give over our hurt and our pain and our difficult circumstances to you. And so God, I pray that tonight as we hear these words, as we're reminded of what Joseph did in the midst of some of the most unimaginable pain, that we can give our hurt to you, and we can allow you to begin to write a new story, a story that what they did for evil, God did for good. So God, I want that to be true of each one of us tonight. I want that so badly, but God, we need to turn to you and ask for you to help bring about the healing and the reconciliation that we need. So God, would you help us? As we kind of transition now to small groups, God, I pray that you would guide our conversations. If this brings up some painful memories of the past, God, I ask that you would bring about healing. If it reminds us of something that we need to do, God, may we just remember this one thing, that when it comes to following you, we are peacemakers. We pursue peace over payment. So we ask for your help. We ask for your guidance. It's all in your precious name that we pray. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. I want to encourage you to head on over to Zoom now in just a little bit, and we'll get started with some small groups. We'll see you in a bit. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in.